Hi, Vakis from Toddle here. I am probably the only or the least technical person at Toddle. I take care of all of our marketing, but I wanted to record this video and show how a non-technical person can also work with Toddle. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to set up a page that kind of highlights our partner agencies, just to give people an opportunity to see who they could potentially start a project with if they need a new web app and they're not comfortable building one on their own. So that's one of the things that I am venturing into today. And please bear with me because I am not super savvy in Toddle yet. But actually it's quite easy to navigate around. So this is the projects page. So typically where you come when you go in, you can either create a new project, but I am going to edit Toddle. And as you know, we built Toddle in Toddle. So I'm going to go in here. And then there's a bunch of branches, and each of these ensure that each and every one of us, we can either work on the same branch together, but let's say we want to alter one bit of the page or the app. We just create a new branch, and then you can kind of go in and do that for yourself without interrupting anyone else or posting on this, like having to wait for other people to post their code. So I am going to go into this little branch that I created. Vakis agency partner pages kind of helps me and others understand what this branch is about, and how it works. So here I've got an overview of the homepage, but I want to work on a new page. So I'm going to click up here, and then I am going to create a new page, and I'm going to call that going to call that agency overview. Let's do that. And then I'm going to create the page. And what happens here is I get a blank page. I'm just going to move this fella out of the way. I get a blank page, and now I have to kind of build from scratch. And I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to just click on this, and I'm going to right click on agency overview and delete it, because there's a lot of elements that I would want on this page, and I don't want to recreate it. So actually I'm just going to go ahead, right click and delete. And then I have to type in agency overview. We do this because it's annoying if you delete something that you want. We do have rollback. So that's possible. So what I'm going to do, I am going to click on this agency page because that's already live and it has a header that I want. It also has the footer. And if you click test app here, you can kind of just scroll to the bottom and see, okay, it has all of the elements that I would need. All right. Then I will actually go back here and I'm going to right click and I'm going to duplicate it. So we're going to call it agency overview, as we talked about before, overview. And I want to make sure that it's the same. So I'm going to just select it, copy, paste, and then I'm going to duplicate. Ta-da. Now I have a duplicate of the agency page. That means that I can actually click out here and then I get my tree. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't want in here. We're going to recreate it from scratch. So what I'm going to do is click, delete, click, delete, click, delete, click, delete. And one day it would be great if we could do shift and click, but that's one for the engineers that I'm going to bother them about later. But as you can see, it's pretty darn simple. And here I could have just deleted the main actually and created a new main, and that would have deleted the whole entire thing. But as you can see here, it looks a little odd because the main has some padding, margin, that is negative, I think. But either way, it's not going to look like this when we finish. So what we need to understand is kind of like, okay, what kind of elements do we want so that we can create it? And here we actually want inside of main, let's see here. I'm going to go up here and then I'm going to add in an element. So I click the master div and I click add element. And then in here, I can kind of get a sense of, okay, what do I want in here? I do actually want a main. So I'm going to go back and say, okay, instead of posting things in, I'm going to keep what is there. And then I add an element. I add a div because what I want to do now is I want to create a headline. And a headline with a subheader. And then I'm going to start on a search box as well. And then I want to have essentially a side menu and a main piece. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, okay, for the main, I'm going to add in a div. And then we have a div without any kind of styling. In this div, I would want to put in another div. And I would want to put in actually two divs because I want a div for my header. And then I want a div for my subheader. And at the same time, I might also add another div for the search part. So now I have a lot of unstyled items. They all live within a div that I can then style and then I can put things in. But let's say, okay, the first one is the header. So I'm going to click add element or right click add element. And then I want a text. We will put in an H1 or heading 1. And then we should start to see that, okay, something happened up there. In this heading, I want some text. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to say higher world class visual programmers. Let's see how that reacts. So then we have some text here that you can actually see because it is hidden. So what we're going to do is we're going to first figure out how we can sort this out. So let's actually not do that. Let's do it here. Let's give this a height, just any random height so we can kind of see what we're doing. So I'm going to put in 800 pixels and then all of a sudden there's a height, right? And what I'm also going to do is this H1 has a color currently that we cannot read. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it white so we can see what we're doing. Later on, we'll style it a little bit. What we also want to do is inside of this, we want to make sure that the H1 is not where it is right now, up in the top. So we're going to actually move this into the middle. And I'm going to try to see what happens if I click this button here. Boom. Then it moved to the middle of the screen. We also want it centered because, I mean, it's a headline. So sometimes it makes sense to have them centered. And we're going to do that there. Now we have a headline. So that's step one. The other thing that we wanted to add was a subheader. And we can do that by, again, choosing the div underneath. So we have this tree, we have the div with everything in. If we fold that out, you see nothing. If we fold it out, we see the divs that we want. So this div, header, this div, subheader. We're going to add an element. Again, right click on it. And then we're going to find some text. Let's see. I actually just want to add a paragraph, I think, because it looks cooler. And in this paragraph, I have some text. Let's see, what should we put in? Build your web app with the best toddle creators in the business. Cool. And I'm going to put a dot after that. I'm also going to put a dot after the headline, just because I'm a little bit of a nerd. And then we can see, okay, great. This kind of looks cool. I might want this H1 to be a little, you know, more centered on the screen and potentially break after world class. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, reduce the width a little bit. Maybe we have something already. Oh, no, not at all. These are little templates that you can build into your version of Toddle, and then you can kind of have the same padding. But we don't actually have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 400 pixels, and then I'm going to work my way to the point. But actually 400 was smack on, perfect. And what I would want to do here as well is, it doesn't look that great right now, so I'm going to center it, and then holy cow, it worked. And then this is a little too close to the text I have above. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of padding. I could add it everywhere, but see, as I don't want the sides and the bottom to have the same padding, I'm going to click this icon out here, because then I can define where the padding is. I want the padding at the top, so I'm going to put it in here, and then I'm going to try large, and that actually does the trick pretty well. All right, so these are the elements I have for now. I have a headline 1, or header. I've got a subheader, which is just a regular paragraph, and then I've got a div underneath. And if you recall, I wanted to build a search bar. So I'm going to do here, and I'm going to say add element. And in here, I would want to put a form or an input. So let's just put an input field and then see what happens. Oh, wow. That's cool. We've got an input field, but it's again way too close to this text. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in a little bit of padding. And I'm going to say, oh, I want top padding here, and I want it to be large again, because then, oh, that's incorrect. I don't want that. The reason why this happened is because I put padding on the input field and not on the div that it's in, and that's why it moved down. So we're going to remove this spacing again. Did that, then that moved back. We're going to go out to the element tree, select the div, and then we're going to put in the padding. So we're going to do it here, and let's say large, make it easy. Booyah, looks cool. I want this box to be a little bigger, because it's kind of one of the cooler things about this. Or the focal point of this page. So let's do 400 pixels width. So it's the same as the headline. And let's maybe double the height to 64. See what that looks like. That looks a little too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, and I'm going to mouse down. So every time I click mouse down, it kind of adjusts. And if I hold it down, it goes a little faster. And then you can see that it actually somehow at one point will hit the number that I want. And sometimes it lags a little bit, but that is because a lot is happening in this project. It's enormous. Let's do 45. Boom. And then the input field has some text on it. And I might want that to be, I'm going to move myself over here. I might want that to be a little bigger, because right now it is quite small. So because we have the styles available in Toddle for this Toddle project, I'm going to click the size. Normally I could just put 16 pixels, and then it would kind of increase the size. But I want to make sure that I use the same size as I do on the rest of the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to test a little bit. So we're going to say, okay, I want text large. That is actually great size. I could also do font size 5XL. It's extremely large, and it looks like that. That looks not that great. So let's go back and say text large. And I'm pretty happy actually with how this looks. What we're going to do next is we're going to go into attributes. And then we will have a look at what, because I want to change the text in here. It should be find an agency. So I'm going to click on the right out here. And then I'm going to type in find an agency ... And there you go. You now have a little search bar. We're gonna program it later so that you can actually search through things here on the page. But that's kind of where we're at now. So we have now 3 divs within a div. The overall div kind of just lets us determine how big this section should be. And we can roll that down and say, okay, this is the header. Because the next thing I want to build is I want to build a section where you have a left hand menu, and on the right hand you have a grid system where we can highlight like different badges for different agencies. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on, let's see here, click on main, and then we're going to add an additional div. Boom. So now this div down here, it has, we can essentially start a new grid. And because we know that we want a left-hand menu, we're going to create a new div for that. Here we go. And we also want a kind of like a right-hand place where we show everything. So we're going to add that element. And that's another div. And now we have the div for the menu, and we have a div for the right-hand side. So we want a menu in this one. So what we're going to do is add element, and I might try with a list, but let me just think here, because we also want a headline, not just list items. But let's add the list, because then we can kind of see what happens. When you have bullet points, it almost always, it starts with a UL, and then every list item will have an LI tag. And that's kind of what is replicated here. So what we want to do here is we want to add a list item. Let's say, what's a good category? So let's say you want an agency that can help you build SaaS apps. Then that could be a category, and we can change all this later. It's just for to have have something to work with. And then let's say e-commerce, that's an item, and then we want to do a blog. And if you want to add multiple items, let's say you want to add more on top of this, you can basically just copy and paste, and then you can work in another category. Let's say education. All right, we're going to leave this be for now. And as you've probably noticed, as I'm editing, you can't really see what's on the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually see if we can pull this down. Boom. And then you see all the elements that we just created. They're down here. And obviously that doesn't look great. So we'll want to change it. But I'm just going to pull this down because this page is probably going to be slightly longer. And it's nice to see what you're working with. An alternative way to just like avoid having to drag it down. So when you're testing, there's a neat little trick, which is Let me just scroll up here, because then you can work within a smaller screen, so you always have it in above the fold. Is basically just, if you click the play button down here, then you can test your app and see how it works. Boom, input field works. And down here, let's scroll down to here. And then you pause, and then you click, and then you're back into the editor as you were before. As you can see, this kind of like indented underneath. And it indented because it is nested underneath, because I copied it into to that. So what you can do is essentially just take it and move it up to UL, and move it around. So if you don't want it to be where it is, you just move it a little down. Let's say I want it here. Up. No, actually, I want it at the bottom. Boom. So I'm moving the other one above. So here you see they're actually exactly where they need to be. So this is great. We can add a couple more categories, but just for the sake of it, we're gonna play around with the styling here. So here we don't want it to take up the full screen, because we want it to be a left side menu. I probably also want it to be a bit smaller, but let's try to see if we can make it less wide. So I click my div, then I go over to the style, style, and we still only have those. So the style page, and then I or bar, then I set the width to, should we try 30%? Boom. That actually looks okay, but I might want to try 20% and see. Maybe. We're going to have a look at this, but let's try this. We're going to unfold this, and then we're going to say the text size inside of this list should be much smaller. So let's try to do this. We click on the little plus up by text, click size, and then I don't know why that didn't work. And then we click the font size. I want this to be small, because it's just a menu. That shouldn't be the focal point. So that becomes text small, and it didn't do anything. So let's see if we have to go all the way down to the LI, or the list item, and then try text size again. And we're going to do text small. Yeah. So that made it a little smaller. Let's see if we can go even smaller. XXS. That was too small. All right. So XS. So I'm going to do this for every single item. There's probably a smarter way to do this. Let's see if we can do it on the div. And do text size small. No, didn't work. So we have to actually do it on every single one. Bear with me here. I am also new to this. So let's do text size small. Was that the one? No, it was extra small. All right. And I'm going to do this a couple more times. Text size extra small, or font size, and font size extra small. Okay, cool. So now we have a menu on the left, and I want to see how it works on desktop as well, and just make sure that it's all as it should be. So I'm going to click down in this component bar. You can see who's in this project. So I'm actually in this project twice. You can revert or undo things, or just click Command Z. And you can also see how many undos you have. So like there's 116 edits. You can undo them if you want. You can click on mobile, see what it looks like on mobile. Doesn't look that great. So that's one thing that we need to tweak after. Tablet, it looks okay. And if we do desktop view, then it actually also looks pretty decent. So let's go back to tablet and then say Okay, for this div, the one that not the overall one, but the one that contains the menu, I want a little padding. So I'm going to do some padding here. I'm going to again click this because I don't want to pad everywhere. I just want to pad on the left side and on the right side. I'm going to do a large gap here, and I'm going to do a large gap here. And then you can quickly see the menus became a lot smaller. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and say, all right, the width that we set before is probably too not generous enough. So we're going to do 30%. And then all of a sudden it looks a lot better. But I might want a very long category in. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to copy the li. And because I now know that if I copy in here, it nests it under this list item. And I don't want that right now. For some projects, maybe, but not right now. I'm going to click the UL. And then I'm going to paste it in. And then there's one below. And I'm going to call this, let's say, what's the longest thing we can think of? Professional services. Boom. That's quite long. And it still looks pretty great. But let's have a look at if we call it very long category name. What will it look like? Okay. It actually doesn't look that bad. So we're just going to remove the last bit and say professional services. That's great for me. Let's go like this. And then I will want a small header for this. So I might put in, let's just put in a div. And then I can move this div up. Boom. No, that's not going to work. I'm going to just put it in here. So I'm going to put in an element. I'm going to put in we can call it a heading. Heading 4. So that's nice and small. We want it to be on top. Right now it's on the bottom, as you can see here. I'm going to move it up top for the UL. And here's the thing that happened that I didn't want. It's like smack put on top of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a div, another one. A lot of divs here, because then I can kind of play around with it. And I'm going to put that here, and I'm going to nest the headline in the div. So now I can actually style it the way I want. And here I'm styling. So I'm going to put a little bit of, guess what, padding, yay. But I'm going to put it at the bottom this time because it's above the menu here. So let's say little. Yeah, actually, that looks pretty darn great. And then we'll want to name this a little better and not just call it heading. So I'm going to click here, go up here, and then project type. And for the observant human, this is a little annoying. And we are well aware. So like you shouldn't be clicking here, here, and then go up there. At some point, we are going to add a rich text editor so you can just edit the text in here. It makes it a lot faster to work. But again, these are some of the things that we run into while building. But this looks pretty good. Now we've got a menu. We could say, I don't want this background. It looks kind of weird and takes up too much focus. So what you could do is you could just say, okay, I'm going to clear the background. Oh, that was the text. The background color is what I wanted to clear. So out here, I'm moving my face again. On the background, you basically just click on that and then clear it. And then you have a beautiful menu that's neatly lined up. And you can essentially to just work with it the way you want. But I'm going to undo that because I actually quite like this menu. I think maybe later I'll change my mind, but here we go. Boom. So we've got all the divs. I'm going to roll them in because now we are going to do something a bit more complex. We want to add in a bunch of badges. And to make this easy, I'm going to right click, add an element. We have a card element, and that it kind of contains most of the things that I'd want. So let's do click card. Boom. And right now it doesn't look great because the card is not where I want it to be. So here I can copy and paste, and I see, oh, the cards, they are coming like down below each other. So what we're going to do in a bit is we're going to connect these cards to Contentful, and then all of the data around like the different agencies that we are partnering with, that'll be pulled directly from Contentful via the API. So we don't need all these cards. You basically just create a dynamic element that pulls from Contentful, and if Contentful has more things that, or more agencies, it'll just create another card. So it's super smart that way. But as you can probably see, they're listed in not so cool ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the main div here, and I'm going to create a different layout. So right now the direction of a new component is, or element is down, and I don't want it to go down. I want it to go sideways. And that means that the menu and these cards, they are now like going sideways every time there's a new element. So, all right, now I've got that sorted, and the spacing actually looks okay. We might go back and change it later, but as you can probably see, we have the same problem. So we're going to do it again. We're going to go over to the styling tab, and we're going to click the direction right or row, and then it does this. And then we will also want a little gap because they're so close together. So we're going to do a gap here. Do little, maybe large. Actually, little was pretty good. So these are some of the things that we're going to do. And then the cool thing about this is if you say want to add another section, you can just do this. Boom. And then there's another section. So this is pretty cool. There's a couple of things that we need to fix here, but overall, like, neat, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is like we can open up on desktop, and then we can see how that looks. Okay, the menu here is a little long, but like it looks okay for now. We can go back and change all this. So now we have the cards. We obviously don't want exactly the same. One of the things I'd love to remove is the button. So I'm going to click on button, and I'm going to remove that. And then I'm going to open up the other sections and do the same. And as I said before, you only have to do this once normally. But for the sake of just like building this out, I'm going to do it for all three. All right, cool. So let's click the section, have a look at it. See, it looks okay, but actually I just want it to be an image with a subheader underneath, because I want this to be the agency logos. So the heading, don't really need it for any of them. So I'm going to click the headings, and then I'm going to just remove them. And here's something interesting happen. What did I do different? Here, boom. It's because it has a little space. Sometimes it makes sense to go out to the element tree and just like click the different things. So like here, there's a hidden H1 where I didn't remove the whole element. So let's do that. Now it looks a little bit better, but I don't want this background. But before I remove the background, I also want to make sure that the height is just like it looks okay. So there's a couple of things I can do. Let me see if I can do it properly. One is here. That I don't want that. I want it to go full from top to bottom. So that's actually okay. And this one, same. This one, same. So now we're in a pretty good space. But I kind of don't want all of the padding down here. So I'm going to set the height to 250. And I think that with padding would be okay. So 250 again and 250 again. Boom. Cool. And now I will want to do background removal. So right now it has a gray background. Let's just clear that. This, clear it. And this, I'll clear. I'm a little amazed that I haven't run into any issues yet, but I'll take it. So here we have fully cleared backgrounds. It's just an image with some text. So I don't want these images to be that large, actually. So the height I'm going to set to, because I want it to be kind of like rectangular squares. So let's set this to 100. That looks okay. Maybe 120 is a little better. Boom. 120. Great. So we're going to do that for all of them. And then we have something I call a result. And the text underneath might be okay. Let's check what we have. So the size, let's do font size base. That's a little too big, isn't it? So font size small. Much better, but not good enough. Font size XS. Okay, font size small. Let's do font size small. And it gets a little bigger. People can read. Make it a bit more accessible, actually. Oh, here. Font size small. All right, this is super cool. Now we've got all this. This is great. But what happens if I add like a ton of... I don't actually want to do that, because what I really want to do is I want to add in a section here that is featured agencies. So if there's agencies that are particularly active in our community, I want to make sure that we kind of like highlight them. And some agencies might be just like not need work any longer, and we want to also respect that. So what we can do is we have this div already, and I kind of want to make this, so the other div was 30%. Let's make this 80%. Oh, great math. 60%. Here we go. Why not just make it? Let's see what happens if we do. Oh, actually, 80%. 80%. Boom. Was it? No, it's 30. That's why it's complaining. So 70%. Here we go. Now it's all the way to the edge. And I kind of want to make sure that we have enough real estate. So let's make this almost go to the end. We're going to put a little bit of padding on the right hand side, and we're going to make that padding large, because then we ensure that things don't go all the way to the edge. And then I'm going to add in let's say here, let's see if we can make it stretch all the way. Boom. So you see what I did there? I basically just told it, okay, it has to be horizontal. We align it not to the left, not to the middle, not to the right. we want to expand it so there's like equal spacing between each of these elements. And that helps me kind of better control how large these elements can be instead of having to do the math on my own. So that's great. Now I want to see how big is this. I might want to make the width of this 20%. That's not big enough, so let's do 30. That's much better. And I'm going to do the same for each of these. So 30%. And, whoop, 30%. Boom. Yeah. So now, oh, did I not hit the, I did not. 30%. There we go. Now the images look a little odd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, and I don't think this works yet. No. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in, and this kind of sucks a little bit, but we're going to add it soon. I promise. No, it's not there. So I'm going to add in custom CSS here. So what I'm going to do is do object fit, and then I'm going to, without the caps, object fit. It probably wouldn't matter, but you know, and then I'm going to make it cover. Boom. And then the image looks exactly how it should look. Do the same for each one of these images. There is very likely an easier way to do this, but I'm just going to do it. So here you have this. I learned this little trick from our CEO and co-founder, Andreas, who made a really cool video on how you can connect your blog to Contentful. But here you go. You kind of have these like featured agencies. What I'm going to do now is I want a headline here. And I actually kind of want the same headline as I have here. So what I will do to save myself a little time is I'll copy this div and I will put it into this div here. Not that one, but the one above. Boom. And now I have project. And as you can see, because I have it at the bottom, it's at the very back. So I'm going to collapse these sections. And then I can see my little div here. Boom. And this is kind of a problem because I do not, like, while I do want everything to like go in the correct direction, I don't want the headline to be next to the items. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to collapse this so I can see what I'm doing. Now I've got the sections. And I am going to create, I think, a div within a div. And this gets a little complicated. I get it, but just stay with me for just a second. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to delete the div, and then I'm going to make it a little simpler. So here we have two things. We have a div that runs that way. So we're going to take the div here and we're going to send it down. And now the project type is there, but we're going to create another div here. Div, boom. And then we're going to put that div underneath here. We're going to take all of these sections, put them in the other div. A little bit of inception here, but you know, where it's all fun and games. We're here to learn, especially me. So if you click the div here, you can do the same trick and you can say, okay, I want the direction to be row. And then we're back. It doesn't look great, horrible anymore. And what I can also do is this div here, I think I set it to stretch. I can just do that. And then I go back to the other div and I say that needs to, be stretched out, and then we're back where we were, and we have exactly what we need here. So there is some padding here, little. This one has the same padding. I want to understand why there is so much padding between these two. So I'm going to have a look at this div. And then I want to see, okay, why aren't these necessarily aligned? And do they need to be? And then let's do, actually, I'm going to do it over here. So, this here needs, I think, should we put it in a div and make it really cool? Let's do that. Add another div. And then we're going to do this, put it underneath that div, and we're going to put the UL in a div. Div and a div and a div. Woo! What can I do to make this exactly where I want it? So this div has something odd going on. Let's remove this little gap. But there we go. That got us a little closer. What else did I put in of silly things? So this has a little gap, and this has a little gap. Why aren't they the same? It's because of the image. So there's in here, we're trying to put it there. Let me see what happens if I do this. It did not help at all. It's got a padding of 8 pixels. Let's try to remove that. And there we go. That was the trick. So that's what happens when you use padding. So we'll remove the padding there. Great. Boom. Now this looks really beautiful. Or at least it looks like something. So let's do featured partners. And let's remove the dot. Oh, cool. Then we've got a project overview. We've got featured partners. See, it's not that bad, is it? Now I want to add some more. So again, my element tree is a little crazy at the moment. So I'm going to just reduce these and see like where I'm at. Okay. So this is the div that I want to work in. Now I want to do exactly the same as I did up here, but I want to have a section that's called browse other partners. And then I want these cards to be smaller. So there's going to be 4 of them instead of 3. Let's do that. So we're going to copy this div, and then we're going to go up to this div, copy in, because then it comes in right below us. And as you remember from before, we need to pull this down to see everything that's happened. But something didn't copy in right, or I did something wrong. Very, very likely the latter. So I'm going to undo and see what happened here. So the div that I want is this one. But yeah, so actually it is this div that I want to copy. I'm going to think, so that's going to put it at the bottom, and I'm going to paste. There we go. That looks a bit more normal. And then I want to copy this, and I'm going to go in here again, and oh, no, don't want to do that actually. So now it's perfectly where it needs to be, but this is incorrect. So we're going to call this, go into that, and then featured partners, we're going to call it browse other partners. And now it should update. Yeah, cool. And as you can probably see here, it looks a little different. That's because this is at, no, let's see. Boom. Let's go down. Because now we can minimize this, and then we can work with the sections. And as I told you, we want multiple sections. So we're just going to not do that. We're going to copy it, and then we're going to paste it into the div. And now we have 4. And we actually want quite a lot more. But let me do this 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have a ton of different ones, and they all now look like really odd and really weird. We don't want that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add in a little gap. Boom. And we're going to not have these sections be as large. So we're going to remove the width. We're going to, or actually we're going to add the width or change it to 20% instead. So they're smaller cards. And then we're going to do that with all of them. And because, there we go. There is something here. Boom. So I'm going to just change this to 20% for all of them. And again, when you're pulling data from an API, you just create a repeat and then it repeats all the items in. But for the purposes of this, I'm just going to show you what it can look like. Boom. So, another 20%, and then we're missing the last 20%. And then we're actually like in a pretty good space. We can almost have 4 cards in one row on desktop. And I think we can maybe fix that by reducing the menu here. So let's go and do that. We're going to say we don't need 30%. We probably need 20. Yeah, that's long enough. And then we, yeah, let's do this 20% because then we have 4 that works. And then this we can change to 80%. And then we are actually in a pretty good spot. So there's like nice padding. Here we can even like do a little check. Okay, this is what the page looks like. There's some padding issues at the top, but we'll fix that. But now you have the page here. It works roughly the way we want. Good padding there, good padding there. We might want to minimize a little bit there. So, all right, let's try to do this actually and say the gap here should be little. That's the wrong one. So I'm just going to click Command C or undo. It's the section that we want. No, it was the div. I wonder what happened there. It's because they're not large enough. So we're going to do 33% for that section. 33% for that section. And again, I'm just clicking the section and then I'm going out into the right and width, changing it to 33%. And that way I kind of get it to where I want it. Maybe the gap is a little too intense. So let's do 32. Actually, yeah, 31%. And then I think we are, 31%. That's pretty good. Okay. And then we're going to go into here and flex wrap. Yeah, there we go. Doesn't it look great? Now, the cool thing about flex wrap is it throws it down to the next line. Boop. And then you can have 200 different partners if you want, or posts or images. And it'll just continue when it reaches the border of what you've set it to. So we're going to set this to, let's do, actually remove this width. And then it goes all the way out. And then you can see it is actually exactly how we want it. This is a bit too high. So we're going to change the height to 210. Yeah, let's do 210 for all of them. 210, boom. 210, boom. Oh. And then you can kind of see how it changes. And that way it'll look pretty regardless of what you do. to 10. And this, like, the cool thing about this is I, as a marketer with no code experience, I've coded like some websites in the past. I've used like a couple of like Webflow, and I know those tools. So it's easy for me to kind of go in and make changes without necessarily having to ask our team to spend a lot of engineering resources on my stupid requests. Because like, if it's adding cool new functionality to Toddle or a new blog, doesn't really like, yeah, I can never really justify that expense. So it's better to just have this. Let's remove this gap, because right now this has a gap on the side, large. Let's remove it, and now it goes out because there is a stopper there anyways. And it looks pretty great, if I say so myself. Let's have a look at what it looks like on tablet. Yeah, still looks decent. Great. So I've got a cool header up here where you can hire world-class visual programmers. You can build your web app with the best toddle creators in the business. You can search for an agency, which will filter this down here. But the thing about this is it is way massive. So we're going to go down to 600 pixels, even 400 pixels. Let's do 500 pixels. Because then we are, I think, a little closer to something that looks natural and normal. Let's see how this renders as a web page. Boop. Go. Yeah, there you go. You can do all these things. This is quite nice. I like it. Let me just adjust this up here so the scroll actually works, because otherwise it doesn't. So imagine like this is the fold on our very little laptop screen, then the website would render like this. Pretty neat, no? But I'll keep this in view. And then I think the next thing that we need to do is basically connect this to our API. And then we're set, basically. So each of these cards, we will want to show what is in Contentful, so we can just pull that in. And we will also want to have these dynamically generated based on the API. And the search box, we want to enable that to find or show the things on the page that we have. So that's going to come in a later video. This is kind of just the first take of what it looks like when you style elements in Toddle. But stay tuned.